Hey guys, my name is Ryan, back again with another Spirit Island video. It feels good to have a plan, to have a sense of direction. If we don't know what we're supposed to be doing, then we can't know if we're making good or bad choices. Without a target, nothing we do moves us closer or further from the intended destination. I mean, this is certainly true in life. Maybe you go through high school, college, your whole life has been deadlines and assignments, and there's a very clear syllabus of what you're supposed to do. You graduate, and all of a sudden all that's gone. And for the first time in your life, you have no sense of direction, and that can be very anxiety-inducing. But hey, this is a board game channel, and board games is all about escaping real life, so let's move on quickly. The funny thing is that when we take up a new board game, one of the first things we're always going to ask is, how do I win? What's the point of this game? What direction am I trying to go? If it's a game that you win by scoring victory points, then you kind of want to know, how do I score points? Right? What am I working towards? I want to feel like the decisions that I'm making are useful and valuable. Spirit Island technically has 4 different ways of winning the game, but in reality, it's basically just get rid of the invaders. That's kind of the only thing that we're trying to do. Along the way, we may just so happen to, get a fear victory, or, we push up the terror level and we just kind of fall backwards into a victory without removing all the invaders. But pretty much every single strategy can boil down to get plastic off the board, get rid of the bad guys, and we win. It's basically a war game. Now, as we can see here on the screen, we have a lot of spirits. There's 37 official spirits in the game. Of course, we got the aspects, you got the Apocrypha spirits, you even have like custom-made spirits. There's so many different spirits, and the thing that separates one spirit from the next is they all somehow have managed to carve out their own way of approaching the game. They each have their own unique path towards victory. And by having so many different ways of accomplishing the same exact goal, that's what makes Spirit Island replayable. That's what makes it so enjoyable. It's not like there's one meta best strategy and you just do that one strategy every single time and the game loses all its replayability. By taking different approaches, you take a defense approach, an offense approach, a utility approach, a fear approach, right? There's so many different ways to go about winning the game, and within each of these paths, there are so many different ways to do it. In these weekly discussion videos, I often like to talk about teamwork and ways that we can bring spirits together and use their varying powers in order to come together and find victory. My big hobby outside of board gaming is playing Frisbee. And like any organized team sport, everyone has slightly different roles. While in Frisbee, everyone has the exact same rule set that applies to them. It's not like, soccer or football, where different positions can and cannot do different things, right? In soccer, everyone is only allowed to kick the ball. You can't use your hands, but one player is special and they can do that. In American football, right, there is literally an entire different rule set that apply depending on the position that you're playing. And there's even penalties for standing in the wrong place because the wrong position to be standing in this location. It's a lot. But in Frisbee, even though every single person has the exact same rules that apply to them, we still subdivide roles and responsibilities. Just because everyone is allowed to do everything, we have so many different skills in this game that we will break them up into different positions. The big 2 ones are going to be handler and cutter. Right now, the club season's over, but I'm doing my City League thing right now, and we're not doing so hot. I think one of the reasons that we're losing is because myself and everyone else, we all have tons of experience playing the game, and over the 20 or so years I've been playing Frisbee, I've done everything under the sun. I've been the deep shot guy, I've been the short guy, I've been the handler, I've been a cutter, I've played the rail, I've played the popper, I've done it all. And so I'm pretty happy doing anything. I, showed up on day 1, we just got random groups of people together, and I finally met the teammates for the first time, and going around introducing ourselves, and I said, hey, I'll do anything, I've played this game a lot, and I can do whatever the team needs. Goes to the next guy, he says, hey, I've played this game a lot, I'll do whatever the team needs. Goes to the next guy, he's like, I'm a hybrid, I can do whatever's needed. Goes to the next guy, he's like, I'm a hybrid, you can put me anywhere, I'll be good for it. again. We went around the whole circle, and every single person declared themselves as being so open and so useful for anything. We actually made no progress whatsoever in structuring this team. We basically would have been better off had we not even asked the question, and we just went out there because people have their preferences. You say you'll do anything, and then when completely left to your own devices, you'll drift to certain parts of the field wherever you're more comfortable. But we put it out there, and everyone was just so polite and so nice to each other. No one wanted to say like, no, I am a handler. No, I'm the guy that goes deep. Okay, you put it up in the air and I go get it. Had people just carved out their own roles for themselves and said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. Okay, you guys do whatever you want, right? But recognize this is what I'm doing, and you guys can make your decisions based off of me. That sounds rude, but it's so much more useful. As soon as you have one person that establishes themselves in a particular role, we can use that as an anchor point for all other decisions to go off of. Maybe I'm trying to stretch by making too much of an analogy between Frisbee and Spirit Island, but by golly, if you've been following my channel, you know that's my favorite thing to do. Well, we have all these different spirits that we could be playing, and, so many spirits are very flexible. Like, imagine if we had a team of, 5 Starlight Seek-Its forms together. Every single person's like, I can do whatever, I'm flexible, who cares, right? It would be just a really awkward, really weird game to try and parse through. But what if we had 4 Starlight Seek-Its form and one very straightforward spirit like Devouring Teeth lurk underfoot? He's like, hey, look, I hit things, okay? I attack. I do damage. That's what I do, right? You guys can do whatever you want, but I am just going to hit this thing. All of a sudden, all these other Starlights, they can start to figure out their roles a lot easier because all of a sudden now we have the damage guy, okay? Now we can have the other Starlights focus on other things. Playing out these multi-spirit games on my channel, it allows me to explore the relationships between different types of spirits, mixing of different playstyles, but sometimes spirits just kind of do their own thing and they just kind of economically help each other from time to time, and you don't really carve out special roles, especially if you don't get a lot of that crossboarding going on. Crossboarding is a lot more fun, but sometimes it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. You got all the spirits on one side, the other side of the equation is the adversaries. Most of the adversaries are very balanced. Like, take a look at Prussia, okay? Prussia does the same exact thing to every single person over the course of the game. Okay, and this is true for most of the adversaries, right? The one that really sticks out is Scotland, and the specific thing that sticks out about Scotland is the escalation. Okay, the escalation hits one person and one person only. So if you're in a single player game, whatever. But if you're in a 2 or greater game, one person is going to eat the escalation for everybody, and all the rest of the players aren't going to have anything happen at all. This is the most dramatic, of course, in a 6-player game where one guy gets 6 towns added to their board and 5 players get nothing. But, every step of the way, we do feel that effect. Okay, one person just gets that much extra weight thrown on top of them and everyone else does not. Well, how does this relate? Well, when you're playing against Scotland as opposed to any other adversary, right? All the other adversaries is very even, it's very balanced, okay? Everyone's kind of dealing with the same thing. Everyone can kind of just have their own problems to deal with. Scotland creates a clear single role as the anchor around what everyone else is going to be doing. Okay, and we like to call this role the tank. Okay, if we can predetermine who is going to be eating that Scotland escalation, we can pick our tank ahead of time. That's really cool. But, in general, whoever winds up being the guy that eats that escalation, we call them tanking the escalation, or they become the tank. Naturally, we could compare Scotland to Prussia like we just mentioned before. Okay, Prussia adds the same quantity of towns, but they do it spread out across the island, okay? It's not like any one person has something particularly dramatic happen to them. It's just, whatever. Everyone gets an even effect. So what does this have to do with everything else? Well, there's one person is going to be treated differently than all the other people are. the recipient of the Scotland escalation is just going to be playing a different game than everyone else by the nature of just getting more stuff to deal with. We call the person who eats that escalation the tank. Okay? Whether they wanted to or not, they got so much more plastic on their board, they have to find a way to deal with it. And by they, I mean the team, okay? It is very unfair to expect one person completely without assistance to have to manage all of this extra stuff. Of course, it is a team game. We want to work together. We win or lose as a team. So if we want to be a good team, okay, we want to talk about our strengths and weaknesses ahead of time. We want to figure out what we can and cannot do ahead of time. We want to figure out our handlers and our cutters ahead of time. And what we really want to do is we want to predetermine someone to be the tank. See, it's not just a random person who's going to take all these extra towns. It is on the board with the most coastal buildings. That board becomes the tanking board. Okay, so if we make some specific moves, like, we want maybe I become the tank for the team. We want that from the start. Maybe I will intentionally push Dahan away from the coast. So if I defend the coast, we don't get the counterattack and my coast stays pretty busy. Maybe other players will push things onto my board in order to build up my town numbers. There's any number of things that we could do in order to force myself to become the person who is going to tank the escalation. So let's say we're in a hypothetical situation, we're playing in Scotland, and we've been chosen to be the tank. Okay, cool. It's a very exciting game. It's just going to play out differently than your other games. It's a lot of fun being the tank, quite frankly. But now we have to pick our spirit. And truth be told, some spirits are just better at being the tank than others are. And so let's talk about that today. If you are chosen to be the tank, what spirit should you pick and why? Naturally, the first question that we need to ask is, what attributes make someone good at being a tank? Well, the thing that makes being the tank different than any other role is that you're just going to have a lot more plastic on the board. Okay, and so small numbers on your spirit are not going to do so well. We need to find a way to get really, really big numbers. Here's a card with a big number. Mark territory with scars and teeth. Defend 9. This is one of the best defend cards in the game. Right, the only other ones I can think of offhand that defend for more is like Indomitable Claim with a defend 20. Of course, that's a major power. It costs twice as much. It's going to take a long time for you to get it. This is an innate power. Defense for 9. That's really good. Only other card I can think of offhand, there might be more, but Quicken the Earth Struggle is a defend 10. Requires a Sacred Site. This does not. Okay, it's a minor power, right? This is unique. Defend 9 is a lot, right? But you know what's better than the best defend card of everything and of all the uniques and all that stuff? Is Skip a Ravage. If you have like an 11 damage Ravage, a 12 damage Ravage, that defend 9, functionally doing nothing. Whereas a Skip a Ravage will cover anything. Could be 2 damage, could be 200 damage. Sweltering Exhaustion will do the same thing. It'll skip a Ravage, deny a Blight, and whatever other effects could come from it. Yes, by defending, you could, counterattack with the Dahan and all that stuff, but generally, if we're talking about huge numbers here, counterattacking with 1 or 2 Dahan doesn't matter, right? It gets a little chip damage here, but it's not going to be the massive game-winning, massive swinging play that you're going to need if you're tanking things. So first thing we're going to look for, yes, we want big numbers, but what I really want to look for is going to be that like infinite scaling stuff, okay? Skipping Ravage is the first thing I'm going to target. It skips an infinite amount of Vaders in a land, okay? It solves it no matter what. There's actually a fair number of Ravage skips in this game. I've got here components from 9 different spirits. That gets us about a quarter of all the spirits in the game. Let's walk through them right quick. So Rampant Green has a special rule where you can sacrifice a presence out of a sacred site in order to skip a Ravage in a land. It can also skip a build. That's generally only relevant against France or if you're losing to England. But skipping a Ravage is the most common way this is going to be used. But all versions of Spread have that ability. It's really, really nice. We have Resounding Footfalls, So Dismay, coming out of Dances Up Earthquakes. Year of Perfect Stillness, coming out of, I believe Nourishing gets rid of this card, but the other versions of Vital Strength of the Earth still have this card. Blinding Glare coming from Relentless Gaze of the Sun, Sweltering Exhaustion from Rising Heat, Strike Low with Sudden Fevers from Vengeance as a Burning Plague, Peace of the Nighttime Sky coming from Starlight Seeks Its Form, Absolute Stasis. It makes a land stop existing, which means it also can't Ravage. So it works for a pretty effective Ravage skip. But of course there are other benefits of this card. You can make pockets and all kinds of cool stuff. And then the enticing aspect for Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares isn't technically a Ravage skip, but it gets you really freaking close. When every invader does -2 damage in a land, that means the only way that you can blight is if you have 2 cities. Definitely something that's quite possible to exist in a land, but it gets us really, really close to a Ravage skip. So as far as tank candidates go, all of these guys are good early choices to consider because they all have the ability to skip a Ravage. You can let lands build up, they can handle them, or at least they can kick the can down the road until later. So why does a Ravage skip matter? Like, what are we trying to prevent with this Ravage skip? Well, it really only does 2 things, or 3 things, I suppose, but it denies a Blight from coming down. That's a major loss condition. Against Scotland, a Coastal Blight actually adds 2 Blight because of that Scotland 5 rule, but it also protects our Dahan, and then when we don't take Blight, we also don't lose our presence. So a couple different reasons why skipping a Ravage could be useful. Now, Blight is the one that actually leads us towards losing, both in the form of running out of Blight, but also destroying our presence. And so instead of skipping a Ravage, what if we instead just removed that Blight? Okay, that gets us cards like Regrow from Roots coming from Keeper from the Forbidden Wilds. Okay, this is a really nice effect. Basically undoes a Ravage. Sure, there's other negative impacts besides just the Blight, like Presence and Dahan, like we talked about before, but focusing on the biggest loss condition, that Blight removal just undoes the Ravage, is a really effective way of buying yourself more time. Now, in a very similar way, instead of removing the Blight after it's added, what if we just prevented the Blight from coming down altogether? Well, Nature Incarnate released a token in the latest sets. It's called the Vitality Token, and it basically says if there's not already a Blight in the land, when a Blight would be added, you instead consume the Vitality Token. Okay, it's kind of similar to Blight removal, just the timing's a little bit different. So in both of these situations, you're still going to be like losing Dahan. Here, a Blight will come down, you could still lose Presence, but both are an effective way of buying us time for scaling to happen till we can overcome the invaders. And, that's kind of what a tank's supposed to do, right? It's very efficiently able to soak up damage and buy time for everybody else. So here on the screen, I've got all of the unique components which are either going to remove Blight or prevent Blight from coming down. So on this left side, we have Spread of Rampant Green, who the top tier, or the 3rd level of the right innate, removes a Blight in addition to all of that defense. Starlight Seeks Its Form has its water innate power, Starlight Seeks Its Form has its water innate power, which removes a Blight. Downpour Drenches the World can remove a Blight with its right innate. And Heart of the Wildfire can remove a Blight with its right innate. In addition, we have a couple cards. There is the transforming aspect for Wildfire, which just transforms a Blight into a Badlands. The Blight goes back to the card, so it is removed, but there is another benefit to it. The cool thing with this is that now it's with 1 power, you get to remove 2 Blight, because both Wildfire and another Spirit both get to transform that Blight into a Badlands. Regrow from Roots, as we were talking about earlier, coming from Keeper. And then Guard the Healing Land, coming from Vital Strength of the Earth. Now on this right side over here, we have a lot of Vitality components. So we got the Nourishing aspect for Vital Strength of the Earth, which is able to add a Vitality. The rest of it has to do with Dahan and all that stuff, but the Vitality line does not have anything to do with Dahan. So even if somehow there's just no Dahan left, you can still prevent Blight from coming down, and this is a fast power. It's really nice stuff. Blooming of the Rocks and Trees, as we were looking at earlier, it's one of the unique cards for Towering Roots of the Jungle. We have the Locust aspect for Serpent slumbering beneath the island. 2 moon, 2 earth, and a plant. We get to add a vitality either at the Incarna or into one of that other person's lands if they have enough absorb presence. Towering Roots can also add a vitality with one of its growth options. Its second growth option adds a vitality at the Incarna. Really, really nice. Makes the Incarna itself an incredible tanking location because you can just add vitality freely. And then Stone's Unyielding Defiance doesn't have vitality, but with his ability to take Blight out of the box as opposed to off the card, it kind of works the same as vitality, where you're not advancing closer to the Blight loss condition. So I put it in this category too. So we just looked at 2 different ways of being defensive and scaling really, really well with defense. And I just want to draw attention that these 3 spirits actually showed up in both categories. So Spread of Rampant Green both has the ability to skip a Ravage with its special rule and remove a Blight with its right innate. Starlight Seeks Its Form can skip a Ravage with Piece of the Nighttime Sky, and it can remove a Blight with the Water Soothes innate. And then Vital Strength of the Earth, both versions are going to have access to Blight removal with Guard the Healing Land. Anything that isn't nourishing will have Year of Perfect Stillness for a skip. And then if you are nourishing, you get a Vitality, which is kind of a pseudo skip. So these, if you really love defense and that's the way you want to approach tanking, these are 3 incredible spirits to that end. But just because you bought a lot of time with this defense, you still didn't win the game. You still got these massive piles of plastic. We need to remove that in order to win the game. Now, that responsibility does not necessarily have to fall on the tank, but if the tank can do that too, that's a really, really nice attribute to have. Simple nominal damage might not be enough. If there's enough invaders in a land, a lot of these powers are good at dealing with 5 damage, 6 damage, killing in a town or 2, maybe a town and a city, maybe 2 cities, right? A couple pieces at a time. But the thing we're looking at here when we're tanking is we're just going to have way more pieces of plastic than we would reasonably expect to have in normal situations. And so we need to have damage that will also scale really well. And I think the most familiar one to everybody is going to be River Surges in Sunlight. This is everyone's first spirit, your training wheel spirit, and that massive flooding power dealing 2 damage to all invaders in a land might be the first thing that you think of, right? We get this massive, immense pile of invaders, and they're all gone. Just the snap of a finger, all the explorers, all the towns are dead, and you have a whole bunch of 1 HP cities, really easy to clean up with a myriad of other effects, right? It's an extremely efficient way of dealing with massive piles of invaders. So, following along that logic, I pulled out a few more spirits that do damage to everything in a land. Stone, I guess, is the one that... starting with Shroud of Silent Mist, we have the Dissolving Vapors power. It deals 1 damage to every invader. Another spirit that has that kind of a power that I did not include is Lightning Swift Strike, because Shroud of Silent Mist has the ability to not allow invaders to heal in lands. So you can play this card a couple times over a few turns, and that will get you there. If you can't wait a few turns, you can play Downpour Drenches the World and use Foundation Sink into Mud, and use Downpour's ability to repeat powers in a land, and you can clear out a whole pile in 1 big shot. Dangerous Up Earthquakes is quite famous for doing a ton of damage when it does its eruption, but one of the things in that massive earthquake, not eruption, in that big earthquake turn, is it actually does have the top tier of its right innate, being in every land where a quake token is removed, you do 1 damage to every invader. So of course you might have 1 single land that's really, really well built up, and you can deal 1 to everything, and then by using the 2 damage per quake token, you clean up everything else. You could do that in multiple lands at the same time. It's just a really big damaging ability. Rising Heat of Stone and Sand is one of my favorites for this. It's very similar to River. It does damage to everything in a land. This one just 1 though. That's because we got that special rule where at a sacred site, invaders have -1 health. So it kind of works out the same way when you use this at range 0. And then once again, I have Stones Unyielding Defiance, which is similar but different, where it does an infinitely scaling amount of damage, but it's reflected based on the quantity of the invaders. The more invaders there are, the more damage we get to do, and it's it's a lot. Since this is a team game, we can rely on our teammates to pick some things up for us. If we're doing a really good job of holding steady, then we can have a teammate come in and do damage for us. Or maybe we're really good at doing lots and lots of damage, and so maybe we're not so worried about trying to really hold steady for a super long time. But maybe you don't have teammates that are going to help you out, and maybe you got to do it all yourself. Well, these 4 spirits showed up in both the heavy scaling offense and the heavy scaling defense sides. These guys can do it all by themselves. So long as they have the economy to support it, within that spirit, they have everything that you could need and you could ask for in order to just handle being the tank, all on their own. So let's say that you are selected to be the tank in your next Scotland game. Who should you pick? Well, on the screen are my top 12 spirits to choose. These are not in any particular order, but I think all of them are fantastic candidates. I thought about doing a tier list, but after you get outside of the S tier, it's kind of hard to make more subdivisions, because sure, there's some that are just awful at being the tank. I'm thinking like Heart of the Wildfire really does not want to be soaking up all those extra invaders, but how do you get extra layers? You get like the kind of good layer, kind of good plus, I don't know, how do you make subdivisions between like kind of good plus, not kind, I don't know, whatever. So we're just going to take a look at the upper crust here. And I've already talked about quite a few of these, like Rising Heat, Dancing Up Earthquakes, where they have that infinite scaling offense and infinite scaling defense. So I'm just going to draw attention to some other guys. Vengeance is a Burning Plague. He has that Ravage skip, but you can also just let inland ravages happen when you don't get that double blight. And Vengeance has that rubber banding mechanic where that blight becomes Badlands and then allows you to get more damage done. So he's very effective for that reason. Of course, Sacrificing Presence converts into damage as well. So yeah, he rubber bands really nicely. In a very similar way, Relentless Gaze of the Sun, it has a Ravage skip, but he's also capable of doing a good amount of damage, a lot of damage. He doesn't rubber band in the same way, but if he does get his presence destroyed, Reclaiming will bring it back. So, if some bad, unfortunate things happen, you take some hits here and there, you have ways of recovering. You're not completely out of the game. Starlight starts with some Ravage skips, but then as we scale up and we start to get our elements going, we have a really nice defend power. We can remove blight so we can slow the game down. We're really good at pulling majors and fighting back. So we have lots of great tools available to us as long as we consciously tech in that direction. Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds, we're just really good at scaling, right? If we're not responsible for going out, spreading out, helping other people, and we can focus on ourselves and just being selfish, we can have a really greedy way of playing the game, and that can be really nice and effective. Of course, we can top out with some of the highest amounts of energy and card plays per turn. So if we aren't responsible for too much and we can play pretty selfishly and keep on double growing, then we'll go up and over the top, no problem. Bringer Dreams and Nightmares, specifically the enticing aspect. One thing I want to draw attention to here, we talked earlier about the damage reduction aspect on the first and third tiers of the enticing innate power, but on the second and the fourth level are gather powers. And so when we have all these invaders all over the place, it can be very action inefficient to stomp out all of these different problems. But enticing can bring everything into one land, and so having tall problems is much easier to handle as opposed to wide problems, and enticing takes care of it all by himself. For Vital Strength of the Earth, I like both the nourishing aspect as well as the resilience aspect. Both of these have a blight removal from one of the unique cards. Of course, as we talked about, nourishing gets rid of years of perfect stillness and replaces it with a vitality. This still has the year of perfect stillness, so both have a second card to slow things down. But I want to draw attention to resilience because you can just make these sacred sites that are able to individually handle so many invaders just by itself. Not even the cards that we have. This will buy us so much time for everyone else to come on in, but we do inherently lack damage. That's the one thing that Nourishing has as an advantage over Resilience. Had a little more damage, better at getting majors because of, every time you gain a major, also gain a minor, so on and so forth, but both of these are really effective tanks. And the last one, we haven't talked about it all this whole time, kind of flying in out of left field. All the rest of these guys have like blight removal, ravage skips, big damage, all kinds of things. Finder's been completely forgotten. Well, Finder, first of all, we can move all the invaders around all the time. We're really, really good against Scotland. Isolates are really strong, so on and so forth. But we can put all of the buildings into one single coastal land to allow us to become the tank. And if that is ever going to ravage, we could just take the whole pile and shift it to a different land, so it's not a problem. And, we are really good at drafting majors. We have tons of elements. We can threshold damn near the whole deck. But we also don't have to be that guy. Let's just say that we whiff on our majors and we don't have good hits. Or someone else has an amazing hit. This card here, Traveler's Boon, is sneaky OP. No matter where someone is, anywhere else on the island, if they have the answer to knock down the massive stacks of invaders, we can just pull them on in. They can even take a couple buildings with them, and then they can do all the damage themselves. So we tank everything, and we set someone else up to do all that damage and destruction. Finder is super flexible. Tons of cool things you can do with this guy. So there we have it. We didn't get a chance to really talk about how the play patterns of being the tank is a little bit different than the other roles, but the short version is that you really don't need to go places, right? You can stay right where you are and everyone comes to you. So it's just a little bit different. Do you like that role? Do you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. Are there any spirits that you like to play as a tank that I didn't include on this list? I'd like to hear that too. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have yourselves a glorious day.